Hello, everybody. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about healthful nutrition for fitness and sport. And if you're following along in the textbook, this will go along with chapter 2. So when we think about how to eat healthy, right? So essentially we're trying to understand what are the guidelines, what are the things that we need to consider when we are developing a healthy diet, and how does that kind of interplay with what we're doing from an exercise and a physical activity perspective, right? So here we can understand the difference between essential and non-essential nutrients. So nutrients that the body needs but cannot be produced at all or cannot be produced in adequate quantities is known as our essential nutrients. Okay, this will include our macronutrients, which we know are carbohydrates, uh, proteins and fats, as well as our micronutrients. So again, kind of thinking about those vitamins and minerals. And then we have non-essential nutrients, which are dispensable nutrients. And these are nutrients that can be found in food, but also formed within the body. So an example here would be cholesterol, right? So we can get cholesterol from different meat products, from eggs, those types of things, but we can also produce it endogenously or within our own bodies. So that's one example there. Creatine is another example. We can get creatine from supplements, we can get creatine from meats, but we can also produce it endogenously or within ourselves. So again, those are kind of the major differences between essential and non-essential. So how are recommended dietary intakes determined? So in the United States, the Food and Nutrition Board, Institute of Medicine, and National Academy of Sciences was established in terms of creating these recommendations for the amounts of nutrients that we should consume. And again, these are things that are constantly evolving, right? We're constantly learning more about the body and more about nutrients and more about processing and chemicals and things like that, and how those affect us not only like today, but also how does that affect us kind of long term, right? So we have what's called the RDA, or recommended dietary allowances, and these were first published in 1941. And initially, this was developed in order for us to prevent deficiencies that would be then associated with disease. So for example, like iron, we need to make sure we're consuming enough iron so that we prevent ourselves from developing anemia. Or vitamin C, for example, if we don't have enough vitamin C, that can lead to a condition known as scurvy. Okay, so these early RDAs, that's kind of what the idea was, right? But now our newer recommendations have more support to not only prevent us from getting the disease, but also how can we optimize our health, right? So the original recommendations for vitamin C, the goal was to prevent the disease known as scurvy, but our new recommendations ask us to have more vitamin C because this can optimize our health and actually improve our immune function. Okay. So the goals of the RDA are to, number one, prevent nutrient deficiency diseases. Number two, reduce the risk of specific health problems or chronic diseases. So again, thinking about how our nutrition plays a role in our overall health kind of in the long term. And then lastly, number three, limit and prevent the amount of that increases our health risk. Okay, so again, not only now are we interested in kind of what's the minimum that we need, but also what's the maximum that we need in order to kind of maximize our optimal health levels. So a couple different terms here, okay, that you should write down. So estimated average requirement is the nutrient intake value that is estimated to meet half of healthy individuals in a life stage or sex. So for example, like 20-year-old males, okay? So these are not used to establish nutrient recommendations. This just simply tells us like what is a normal 20-year-old male doing, right? So again, these are just giving us snapshots of what is our current population doing in terms of this nutrient. Okay, recommended dietary allowance, or our RDA, is the average intake that is sufficient to meet the nutrient requirements of 97 to 98% of healthy people in that life stage or sex group. Okay, so if I'm going along with my example of 20-year-old males, right, maybe we would estimate that the average 20-year-old male is consuming 2 servings of vegetables per day. However, our RDA, our recommended daily allowance, is more like 5 per day, right? So again, EAR tells us what are we currently doing. RDA tells us what should we be doing, okay? And then the tolerable upper intake level, or UL, is the highest level of daily nutrient intake that is likely to pose no risk or adverse health effect for individuals within the general population, okay? So this kind of shows you what this looks like when we kind of compare and contrast these. This you can see vitamins and minerals, and here you can see what is the average person doing versus what is the recommendation, right? So again, our recommendation is clear over here, and what is the average person doing? Only meeting about 45% of that particular need. So again, this just kind of demonstrates or gives you a visual to go along with these discrepancies in terms of what are we doing and what do we need to be doing or what should we be doing. Okay, here you can kind of see a little bit more layering. So here you can see our average intake down here being low. So our observed level of nutrient intake is low. RDA is that intake where we'd like people to be. Okay, here you can see AI, and AI doesn't bear a predictable relationship to the estimated the estimated amount versus the RDA. And this is an estimate based on nutrient intake of healthy people. And this is your upper limit here. So again, what's the maximum amount that we can intake kind of on the upper edge without it causing any negative impact? Okay, so here I'm going to just kind of quickly go through some of the different food guide pyramids that we've had over the course of the last couple decades, right? So here you can see the original food guide pyramid, and this is what I prefer. This is what I like because this is what I learned 20 some years ago or whatever when I was in college. But here you can see it is set up as a pyramid. On the bottom, we have bread, rice, cereal being 6 to 11 servings. So again, this would kind of be your grains. Then you can see fruits 2 to 4 servings, vegetables 3 to 5 servings for a total of a minimum of 5 fruits and veggies per day. Then you can see 2 to 3 servings of protein such as meat, fish, nuts, eggs, things like that. Then you can see our dairy, we're recommending 2 to 3 servings here, which are also going to be high in protein. And then fats, oils, and sweets at the top of the pyramid that we should use sparingly. Then we progress to this pyramid. So this is my the next stage, and this came out in 2005, so right after I learned the original. And this one they developed because it's supposed to give you a little bit more information regarding the quantities. So now instead of saying 2 to 4 servings of fruits, we're saying 2 cups. And instead of saying 3 to 5 servings of vegetables, we're saying 2.5 cups. In grains, 6 ounces. So again, we're looking to gain a little bit more in terms of how much is a serving. That's kind of what the major difference here is. And then the other thing that they added to the food guide pyramid was that we need to maintain physical activity in order to create this nice balance. So again, a lot of good things coming from this food guide pyramid. Again, if I think about 6 ounces, that's hard for me to visualize. So I think that maybe would be a limiter of this particular food guide option. Again, if you said 5.5 ounces across the course of one day, again, that's hard for us to really visualize. And if we had 5.5 ounces of nuts, for example, that'd be way over our recommendation versus 5.5 ounces of like chicken breast, for example, might be below the actual recommendation. So again, while they're trying to kind of give us more information about how much, I think we missed the boat a little bit in terms of, what does that actually look like or how does that kind of work out? Then came this Eat Well plate, and the plate kind of shows you what one meal should look like throughout any given day. Here you can see fruits and veggies taking up about a third of the plate, and then your grains taking up about a third of the plate, 25% for our dairy. Here you can see foods and drinks that are high in fat or sugar being a small portion, maybe 10%. And then our meats or proteins over here for about a 15%, okay? My biggest issue with this is that most people don't eat vegetables for breakfast, right? So again, you're kind of already missing the boat with that first meal of the day if you're not consuming vegetables. Again, I would say fruits are common for us to include in our breakfast, but it's hard for us to sneak half of our plate full of vegetables for breakfast. So again, we think about this culturally, I think we do miss the boat a little bit there in terms of what does each meal look like versus what does that total quantity of food look like that you consume over the course of one day. Okay, and then this, my choosemyplate.gov, a much more simple version of what we should be doing. So again, now we're showing half of our plate made up of fruits and vegetables, about 25 or 30% for grains, and then about 25 to 20% from proteins, and then our dairy as well, to create this My Plate option. Again, it's simple, but also it doesn't give us a lot of information, right? So again, if we look at fruits, for example, okay, well, is applesauce, like a sweetened applesauce, equal to having fresh blueberries? Or canned peaches equal to having like a fresh orange or something along those lines? So again, I think we're missing a lot of information. However, they've upped the website, so you can go to the website and get more information with this particular option. Again, one thing that does is it assumes people have access to technology to be able to go onto the website and be able to kind of find more information about, what is healthy within each of these kind of categories. Okay, so we think about this key nutrient concept. So key nutrient concept for obtaining a balanced diet. So humans require many diverse nutrients, including 20 different amino acids, 13 vitamins, and 15 minerals. Okay, 8 nutrients are central to human nutrition. So these nutrients we've kind of identified as like maybe like the top tier, like these are the most important things that we need to make sure we get every day. So protein, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamins A, C, iron, and calcium. Okay, so foods found naturally in plant or animal forms, these nutrients are normally accompanying by other essential nutrients, right? So again, if I'm going to eat something that's high in protein, for example, black beans and brown rice, okay, I'm going to kind of naturally by default get some of these other essential nutrients in those particular items. So key nutrient concept is if these 8 key nutrients are adequate in your diet, if you kind of focus on those, you're probably going to receive ample nutrients in kind of all of these other categories, right? So again, the idea here is if I can kind of focus in on these items, then I will probably cover my bases for everything else along the way by default. Okay, so here's some examples of items that include these key nutrient concepts. Okay, so protein, I already gave the example of beans, but peas and nuts also kind of fit into that category from a plant perspective. Animal sources, we have meat, fish, cheese, and milk. Okay, we go to vitamin A, dark leafy greens. Again, kind of overwhelmingly throughout this course, we'll see dark leafy greens coming up as a great option for us in regards to a lot of different nutrients. So when in doubt, choose dark leafy greens always, right? So again, we're thinking like spinach, kale, broccoli are great options for us in terms of really nutrient dense items. And again, maybe you're thinking like, well, shit, I really don't like spinach or I really don't like kale. Again, thinking about how can we find ways to kind of sneak this into our diet so that we're not just having a kale salad, right? Are there ways that we can kind of sneak it in into a smoothie or into pasta sauce or something along those lines so that we're getting that without that flavor if you don't like that flavor? Okay, so other things for vitamin A include orange or yellow veggies, such as like a bell pepper, okay, fortified milk from animals. Vitamin C, so any of your citrus fruits, so oranges, lemons, and limes. Again, dark leafy greens, potatoes, and strawberries fit in here. Animal source liver. We go to thiamine. You can look at breads, cereals, pastas. So again, a lot of them will have that thiamine in their nuts as well. We look at animal sources, pork and ham. riboflavin, which is a derivative of one of the B vitamins. Bread, cereal, pasta, milk, and cheese are good options. Niacin, same thing here. So bread, cereal, pasta, and then some of our meat or protein sources on the other side for those animal options. Iron, again, dark leafy greens, so spinach, asparagus. We've got beans and peas there as well, and meat. Calcium, we've got broccoli, spinach, kale. So again, more dark leafy greens, milk, cheese, and salmon. Now, certainly these are not all inclusive lists. I just kind of selected foods that I thought would be easy for us to access as college students. That would be easy for you to be able to find at the grocery store and figure out what to do with when you get it home to your kitchen as well. Okay, this is kind of cool. So this nutrient density, this kind of shows you an example of what's known as the Andy scale. And the Andy scale is giving us kind of like a score for each of these foods. And the higher the number, the better the food is for you in terms of its overall health or its overall health benefit, right? So check out all these freaking green things, right? That are kind of the top of the charts here. Kale, collard greens, which I think are gross, but some people like them. Watercress, which is another option for like salads. Bok choy, which is found in like a lot of Asian cuisine. Spinach, romaine lettuce, Brussels sprouts, carrots, broccoli. So again, just a lot of fruits and vegetables on this chart. Certainly not all inclusive. This just kind of gives you some examples of some items and kind of how they're scored. Again, if you kind of shoot to have a few of these high nutrient density items each day, you're probably going to hit your bases for all of those essential nutrients that we mentioned. Okay, so we think about like, what does this mean? Like, how do we take away from this so that we can continue to every day think about how we can improve our nutrition, right? How can I each day approach the day with an open mind in terms of what small changes can I make in order to continue to improve my nutrition or improve my general health every day, right? So here are some ideas for this. So number one, balance the food that you eat with physical activity to maintain or achieve a healthy body weight, right? So again, everything's balanced, right? So again, if you want to consume a large quantity of calories, then it's really important that we're doing enough physical activity to burn those calories so that we can maintain a healthy weight or get ourselves to a particular healthy weight. Number two, eat nutritionally adequate diet consisting of a wide variety of nutrient-rich foods. So again, variety is really important, not only each day, but day to day as well, right? So again, we want to have diversity in any singular day, but also diversity over the week as well, okay? Choose a plant-rich diet that has plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Again, I think if you just because I think a lot of times, like, I think I'm doing pretty darn good with eating fruits and vegetables, and then I go to write it down. I'm like, oh, well, no, I only had two, servings yesterday or whatever it is, right? So if you can think about it and be conscious about consuming fruits and vegetables, figuring out which of those you like, figuring out how to cook those things and include that as part of your normal meals, the better off you'll be. So again, plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grain products, foods that are rich in complex carbohydrates, phytonutrients, and fiber. So again, we think about good options for whole grains. So things like oatmeal, whole wheat pasta, or like a brown rice, or like a nice dense whole wheat bread. So those are all going to be rich in complex carbohydrates and full of fiber, which are going to allow us to kind of improve that colon health and lots of other benefits as well. Number four, choose a diet that's low in saturated fat, trans fat, and cholesterol. So again, just kind of minimizing those processed meats essentially. So again, thinking about like not buying bacon cheeseburger from McDonald's or stopping at Casey's and getting that kind of stuff, right? So again, just kind of minimizing the crappy meats in our diets. Choose beverages and foods to moderate or reduce your intake of added sugars and refined sugar or refined carbohydrates. I think big ticket items for college age students are fancy coffees, in your energy drinks, and then fancy like mixed drinks and that sort of stuff, right? So again, thinking about our calories when we consume liquids, right? So again, if you stop and get an Americano or some sort of mocha or fancy coffee each day, what's the calorie content? What's the added sugar that is included in that? And again, I'm not saying not to get those because I love that stuff just as much as anyone else. But thinking about, okay, well, I had 4 this week. Can I shoot for 3 next week, right? So thinking about how can we kind of moderate that, or how can I use physical activity to kind of balance that? So on the days that I get those fancy coffees, maybe I also need to make sure I go for a 30-minute walk in addition to my normal exercise routine that day, or something along those lines. That's just an example. Choose and prepare foods with less salt. So again, cooking at home almost always reduces your salt intake when you eat out. Again, lots of things are heavily salted. And again, if you look at processed foods, salami, for example, or like, like frozen meals. So like a frozen pizza, or like those frozen, even like the healthy, like frozen meals, like I don't even know what they're called, like a TV dinner type of thing, have a lot of salt in them. Okay, so again, using fresh food and preparing that at home is going to have significantly lower salt intakes. Number 7, maintain protein intake at moderate levels, obtaining a large amount of protein from our plant sources. So again, choosing healthy plant options for those proteins. So different types of beans and rice are good options there. And then those dark leafy greens kind of go along with that. Number 8, choose a diet that's adequate in calcium and iron. So again, calcium is easy for us to get in the form of dairy items, and iron can be rich in some of the dark leafy greens that we've talked about, but also in animal products such as red meats. Number 9, practice food safety, including proper food storage, food preservation, and preparation. Number 10, consider the benefits of dietary supplements. So again, thinking about taking a daily vitamin. Number 11, drink alcohol in moderation. And again, kind of keeping track of that, in a food journal is really useful in terms of allowing us to kind of understand what is it that I'm doing and how can I do better? How can I improve? Number 12, eat what you like, but balance it with your overall health. So again, if you really like brownies, is there a way we can make those brownies a little bit healthier? Or is there a way that if you have 2 brownies every day, we can cut it down to 1 brownie every day or whatever, right? So again, thinking about balance and our overall health. So vegetarian, again, why do people become vegetarians? And again, we're thinking about reducing, um, you know, saturated fats. Again, maybe I should start by saying a vegetarian is someone that's not eating animal products, or could just be they're not eating meat. Again, individuals can become vegetarian for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's animal rights, maybe it's the health, such as avoiding saturated fats, or it's an alternative lifestyle. Again, you can think about this from a economic perspective as well. So lots of reasons why people become vegetarian. I think this is funny. Vegetarian is an old Indian word for bad hunter. So again, we think about our kind of, where we've come from, right? We were hunter gatherers. And so, gathering would be the fruits and the vegetables, and the hunting would be the meat products. So again, kind of thinking about that combination as it relates to evolution. So we think about vegetarian diets. Is it possible that we get enough protein? Absolutely. You can absolutely get protein from plant products. However, if you are a vegetarian or decide to become vegetarian, it's really important that you educate yourself on how we can get the sufficient amino acids that we need. Okay, so plant sources meet nutritional needs for protein, provided that we're giving ourselves sufficient variety of those foods. Fruits and vegetables are also incorporated into that diet. Okay, so again, if I'm to go to a restaurant and get like a grilled chicken salad versus a plate of French fries, okay, well, the plate of French fries is vegetarian, yes, but is that a healthier option than maybe that grilled chicken salad? Again, lots of debate there, but I think most people would agree that the grilled chicken salad would be the healthier option. But again, lots of debate there in terms of kind of your perspective on vegetarian and vegetarianism. Vegetarians need to make sure they are consuming enough essential amino acids, and they can do this through balancing high protein plant products in their regular diets. Lots of types of vegetarians. So a vegan is somebody who eats no animal products whatsoever. So they eat no dairy, no eggs, no honey. They eat exclusively plant products. Ovo-vegetarian will include eggs in their diet, but no dairy. And a lacto-vegetarian will consume milk products, so like milk, cheese, yogurt, but they will not consume eggs. Pesco-vegetarian, they'll eat fish, but no poultry. A fruitarian is someone who consumes parts of a plant that have been dropped off of the plant. So they try to avoid destroying the plant in any way. This seems wild, and I can't believe that people are alive that can do this. But basically, like, they wait for the apple to fall off the tree, and then they can eat the apple because they don't want to hurt the plant itself. And then, so that seems like absolutely crazy to me. And then we have a semi-vegetarian, and this is somebody who doesn't eat red meat or pork. And again, that could be like a religious thing, or it could be a health-related thing, because there is a lot of saturated fat in both of those items. So, people can kind of like eliminate those altogether to avoid those saturated fats. What are some concerns for vegetarians? So there is some debate on the availability of B12 for vegetarians. B12 is only found naturally in animal products. So in order for you to get B12, you have to consume animal products. Well, if you don't consume animal products, then what do you do, right? So then you're going to be vitamin B12 deficient. So you either need to take like some sort of supplement, or eat some foods that are fortified with B12. So again, a lot of our soy products are fortified with B12. And so vegetarians can kind of choose that as an option as well. We think about mineral intake. Vegetarians tend to be low in B12, calcium, iron, and zinc. So it is recommended that you take a supplement of each of those, or make sure you're consuming some sort of foods that are fortified in those items, whether that be like a fortified soy milk, or there's lots of cereals that are fortified with these items as well. What are some of the benefits of being a vegetarian? So we can see that vegetarians generally have a higher fiber content. It decreases our risk of colon cancer because of the higher fiber diet. That's better for our colon health. It's generally lower in calories and fat, and we see a lower incidence of obesity, coronary heart disease, or coronary artery disease, hypertension, diabetes, and some cancers. Again, so there are lots of benefits to eating vegetarian, particularly if you really focus on consuming those healthy fruits and vegetables in a wide variety each day. What about athletes? Should athletes be vegetarian? Okay. So vegetarian athletes need to make sure that their calorie intake is enough, because plant products tend to be lower in calories. And we also need to make sure that their protein intake is adequate. So we need to watch for iron status, and particularly in our female vegetarian athletes, because it's hard for us to absorb a lot of iron from those plant items. We also see a greater incidence of amenorrhea in female vegetarian athletes. Amenorrhea is the loss of, or the absence of, a menstrual cycle. And again, that's bad for us for a lot of different reasons, but that's an indication of low energy availability in females, and that can be problematic and negatively impact our athletic performance. Vegetarian diets tend to be low in creatine, so thus vegetarian athletes may have lower muscle creatine levels than meat eaters. So again, they could consider supplementing if needed in order to kind of make up for that. Also, it's important for our vegetarian athletes to watch their fiber intake, like in the 1 to 2 days leading up to competition, because high fiber diets can lead to having to poop more often, basically. So like, we want to make sure that doesn't become an issue when we're kind of preparing for a competition, game, or whatever it might be. Will a vegetarian diet affect our physical performance? Okay, so well-planned, appropriately supplemented vegetarian diets appear to be fine, right? So they appear to effectively support athletic performance. So there seems to be no issues for vegetarian athletes if they do it well, right? If they're getting enough calories, if they're getting a diverse amount of nutrients in their regular diet. So plant and animal protein sources appear to provide equivalent support to athletic and fitness training and sports performance, provided protein intakes are adequate to meet the needs for essential amino acids. So, what about consumer nutrition? So, thinking about food labels and health claims. So, knowing how to interpret food labels may guide you in developing a nutritious, safe, and healthful diet. So, our daily value represents how much of a specific nutrient you should consume in your daily diet. So, again, when we're looking at that label, it'll give you a daily value of 42%. And basically, that means that 42% of the iron that you need in that particular day can be found in that one serving of whatever that item is that you're consuming. So again, we kind of break down what's happening with these nutrition labels. A lot of things to kind of look at here. So number one is the serving size. So one package of fruit snacks or whatever is probably one serving, but that's not always true, right? So if you get like a mini bag of chips, for example, a lot of times it'll contain 2 servings. So if it's 2 servings, right, you have to double everything if you eat the full bag, right? Again, it's very easy to be confused by this because it is a little bit can be misleading, right? It says 140 calories, but well, shoot, if I eat the whole bag, it's 280 calories or whatever, right? So next you can see the amount of calories. Again, that's per serving. So if you're going to consume more than 1 serving, then you got to consider that. We can look at these daily value items here. So again, this particular item has 12 grams of fat, and that represents 18% of our daily values, okay? Or how much we should consume regularly, okay? And then you can see here in red, these are kind of like the good guys, right? So we have dietary fiber, protein, and then vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron are listed here. And these we want to have a high amount of. So here you can see you got 20% of your calcium in that serving. So that was good. So that's something just to kind of think about there. And then down below, it has a footnote about this stuff in terms of those daily values as it relates to a 2,000 calorie diet or a 2,500 calorie diet based on what your needs might be. Okay, so here are some other items that are kind of predetermined by the FDA and how the FDA defines them. Okay, so calorie free, if something is listed as calorie free, it has less than 5 calories in it. If it's low calorie, it's got less than 40 calories. And if it's reduced calories, then it's 25% fewer calories than the normal item. So, for example, if it's like reduced calorie Oreos or whatever, okay, let's say the Oreos normally are 100 calories or whatever for 2 Oreos, okay, 25% less calories. So now if it says reduced calories, it's probably 75 calories or whatever. Okay, so again, that doesn't mean it's like good for you, which is a little confusing as well. Total fat. So if it's fat free, it has less than 0.5 grams. If it's low fat, it's less than 3 grams. And if it's reduced fat, it's 25% less fat than the original reference food. So for example, if you buy reduced fat mayo, right, it still has a lot of fat in it, right? But normal mayo maybe has 28 grams, or let's say 25 grams for simplicity's sake, okay? And with reduced option, maybe now I have like 17 grams, right? But it's still a lot. That's still a lot of fat in that particular item, okay? So here you can kind of see those standards for each of those items. This just shows you another kind of how the FDA defines each of these terms. So if it's calorie free, it's less than 5 calories, for example. If it's can listed as fresh, it's raw, unprocessed, or minimally processed with no added preservatives. How does it define organic? Okay, so ingredients do not use chemical fertilizers, pesticides, genetic engineering, sewage sludge, antibiotics, etc. Okay, what does it have to do in order to be considered healthy on the label? It's low fat, low in saturated fat, no more than 480 milligrams of sodium, no more than 60 milligrams of cholesterol, and it has to have at least 10% vitamin A, vitamin C, proteins, iron, calcium, and fiber. So again, just kind of interesting. What are those standards that we need to hit in order for the label to have any of these terms listed on them? So what about dietary supplements and health? So a dietary supplement is a food product that contains at least one vitamin, mineral, herb, or other plant product, amino acid, or dietary substance that supplements the diet by increasing the total intake. Okay, so it could be a food product, it could be a pill as well. Okay, could contain essential amino acids or vitamin or mineral within them. It could also include other non-essential things such as like ginseng, ginkgo, or other herbal products. It should be used technically to correct a deficiency. So again, if I'm vitamin C deficient or vitamin D deficient, then consuming a supplement will supplement what I'm already eating within my diet. Okay. If you're a special population, such as pregnant or older adult, vegan, vegetarian, or shooting for weight loss, where we're limiting our food choices, this is also a good option for them. Okay. So supplements can be used to correct a deficiency, must contain a label that includes its ingredients with dosage, recommendations, and safety important information. And will supplements improve my health? Honestly, no. Like it should if you are deficient in something, and it can help us kind of cover our bases if you're one of those special populations. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're just doing the right things, eating healthy, eating a good variety of things, then you should be fine. Healthful nutrition recommendations. So can nutritional strategies improve my physical performance? Yes. Up to 40% improvement depending on our sport. So again, we can see nutrition playing a huge role in improvement of our sport performance. Can also help us in recovery and injury prevention, and that can account for up to 15%. Okay, so during training, again, these are just some very simple sport nutrition guidelines. So during training, making sure we're getting enough calories to support our practice/training sessions, taking in an appropriate amount of hydration. We want to consume carbs and proteins prior to and or after hard sessions, making sure we're consuming breakfast and a good quality breakfast. Prior to competition, so 3 to 4 hours prior to our warm up for competition, we want to have a solid meal that's high in carbs, low in fiber, and foods that are high in GI. So these can be simple items, simple sugars, low in fat, low to moderate in protein. And then during competition, we want to consume both carbohydrates potentially and fluids depending on how long that competition is. After competition or after a hard training session, we want to consume protein and carbs in a 1-to-3 ratio, 15 to 45 minutes after the exercise is over. We want to make sure we're also consuming fluids and electrolytes, and simple carbs are for those competing several times in one day. So again, if I had like a tournament or something, it'd be good for us to consume some simple carbs between each match or each game, along with fluids and electrolytes. And then when we're traveling for competition, again, it's important that we think about packing this stuff and planning ahead, right? So pack your own foods so you're not going to the concession stand or stopping at a gas station. Fluids and that sort of thing in a cooler or lunchbox. Some great options include bagel with peanut butter, fruit, cereal, sports drinks, pretzels. All of those are good options. Maybe it's granola bars or Cliff bars or something along those lines. That'll be good options for us. Here's some examples of easy things to take when you're traveling for a competition. So some grains, bagels, fig Newtons, popcorn, wheat crackers like a wheat thin, something like that, pretzels, graham crackers, cereal, granola bars or Cliff bars. Protein options, sliced turkey, maybe just like a turkey sandwich, turkey wrap. We could do a peanut butter sandwich or peanut butter with a banana, something like that. Cheese sticks, hummus. Again, hummus could go with like pita chips or pretzels pretty easily, almonds, hard-boiled egg, protein bar. Veggies, again, maybe this could be used sparingly in this particular scenario. We can use them after we're done, but a lot of these are going to be higher in fiber, and that might not sit super well for a lot of people. But some examples: carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, celery, and tomatoes are easy to pack and easy to take with us. Fruits, good easy options there. Fruit juice, banana, orange, apples, pears, dried fruit, and grapes would be good choices. Those applesauce unsweetened little packets are also very easy, portable to take with us as well. And then dairy, like a little small container of like a yogurt or like a low fat chocolate milk for after the competition would be a good option as well. Do nutrients recommendations vary based on gender? In short, yes. Nutritional recommendations are best determined based on the demands of the sport as well as environmental conditions. But gender certainly can play a role here. So, adolescent and adult premenopausal females will need more dietary iron in comparison to men. But total calories needed will be based on body size. So again, by default, females generally need less than men, but really it's more based on their body size and muscle mass, not necessarily based on whether they're male or female. And then we also can have a concern for what's known as RED-S, or relative energy deficiency syndrome. And this is common, or more common, I should say, in females in comparison to males. So making sure the females are consuming enough calories is often more important or challenging in comparison to what we see with men. And then what about age? How does age impact our nutritional recommendation? So children and adolescents are going to need greater protein intake, greater calcium intake to optimize our bone health. And then older adults are going to have a decrease in calorie need because their metabolism is going to decline as they age, and they can focus on obtaining sufficient vitamin B and D within their diet as well. And again, that can come from natural options or from some sort of supplement if needed. All right, that's it for today. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you next time.